My name is Mark, and I am a firefighter in New York City. I have been working in this job for more than 20 years, and although I could say that I have become accustomed to emergencies, sirens, and tragedies, there are things that never go away from your mind. I have been in all kinds of situations, impossible rescues, horrible accidents, and, of course, fires that seemed unstoppable. But there is one in particular, one that happened recently in an old house. It was the end of September, a cold and silent night. The city had spent a fairly quiet day at the station. My colleagues and I were having dinner, and most of us were already getting ready to sleep for a while when suddenly the alarm sounded. Whenever we hear that alarm, our heart beats hard. Even after so many years, you know that something is wrong, but you don't know what awaits you until we get into the truck. While we were leaving, they informed us by radio that it was a fire in an old house on the edge of the Bronx. They described it as an abandoned house, one of those that are on the outskirts and hardly anyone notices. I thought it would be one of those nights where the fire is due to homeless people sneaking in to light bonfires. I was already driving slowly along the Sierra Road, carefully navigating the weight of my load around every bend. I had about 20 miles left before reaching the most dangerous part, the curve of the Spectres. This section had developed a notorious reputation since the road was built years ago. A series of fatal accidents had painted the curve with blood. Locals insisted the road had a mind of its own and that, on foggy nights, the ghosts of those who had died there returned, trapped in an eternal loop, seeking to drag others with them. They were just legends, I told myself. It wasn't my first time using that curve in the dead of night, and although I had felt a chill on occasion, I had never seen anything unusual. I switched on the CB radio to report my location, hoping that some fellow trucker was nearby for a chat to stave off loneliness. The CB usually provided some companionship on night routes, but that time, instead of a friendly response, I heard a sound akin to an echo, a soft murmur emerging from the static. "Here you go, reporting from 10 miles before the curve." I fell silent. That voice was mine, but something about the tone made me hesitate. I hadn't said anything yet or even touched the CB microphone, and yet my voice resonated back, echoing strangely, as if it came from a distant place. My name is Mark, and I am a firefighter in New York City. I have been working in this job for more than 20 years, and although I could say that I have become accustomed to emergencies, sirens, and tragedies, there are things that never go away from your mind. I have been in all kinds of situations, impossible rescues, horrible accidents, and, of course, fires that seemed unstoppable. But there is one in particular, one that happened recently in an old house. It was the end of September, a cold and silent night. The city had spent a fairly quiet day at the station. My colleagues and I were having dinner, and most of us were already getting ready to sleep for a while when suddenly the alarm sounded. Whenever we hear that alarm, our heart beats hard. Even after so many years, you know that something is wrong, but you don't know what awaits you until we get into the truck. While we were leaving, they informed us by radio that it was a fire in an old house on the edge of the Bronx. They described it as an abandoned house, one of those that are on the outskirts and hardly anyone notices. I thought it would be one of those nights where the fire is due to homeless people sneaking in to light bonfires or something similar. But when we arrived at the scene, I knew I was wrong. The fire, focus, I told myself, it's just the fog. But the voice on the CB returned, louder now, more insistent. "This is your last curve, Jake. Stop." My whole body trembled upon hearing those words as if something icy pierced my chest. I had never felt such immediate and intense fear. The voice was mine, but it spoke with a tone I'd never used, one that sounded desperate, pleading, as if begging me not to proceed. In that moment, I realized something that left me frozen. It wasn't just the CB. The very same voice was starting to echo in my head, repeating those words in my mind as if I were trapped in a nightmare. "Stop, Jake, stop." I tried to push those thoughts away, focusing on the road ahead, but the fear had nested inside me. The curve was approaching, and the air in the cabin felt thicker, as if I were breathing underwater. I tried to roll up the window to keep the fog outside, but nothing seemed to ease the oppressive sensation. About 100 meters from the curve, I noticed something in the road. It was a figure, a shadow that seemed to move toward me, slow and steady, occupying the center of the lane. My first instinct was to hit the brakes, but the weight of the truck made any sudden movement potentially fatal. I inched closer, and the headlights illuminated the figure. It appeared to be a man, or at least that was what it looked like. He wore a dark jacket and a hat that obscured his face, and he stared intently at me. "It can't be," I murmured as my heart felt like it might explode. Then the figure lifted his head, and I saw his face. It was me. My own pale face with empty eyes, as if looking through me. The figure raised his hand, pointing forward, as if warning me to stop before entering the curve. I slammed on the brakes, but the truck wouldn't respond. The load pushed me toward the curve as if I were being drawn by an invisible force. The figure looked at me with a look of terror on his face, and at that moment, the CB blared again, this time with a clarity that made me shudder. "This is your last curve, Jake. Your last curve." I twisted the wheel, trying to maintain control, but the road seemed to resist me. I felt something pushing me, dragging me toward the edge. The figure vanished, and for a moment, I thought it had all been an illusion. But as I turned, I saw something that took my breath away. The curve seemed to distort in front of me, as if the road extended into an endless darkness. The truck's headlights illuminated an abyss that appeared to widen like a mouth ready to swallow me. And in that darkness, I saw shadows, figures moving slowly, watching me from the other side of the road. Suddenly, one of the shadows materialized, approaching me. It was another trucker, his face covered in grime and blood. He looked at me with hollow eyes as if trapped in an eternity of suffering. I tried to divert my gaze, but the CB echoed again in the cabin with a voice so low it was barely a whisper. "We're trapped. There's no way back." My heart raced so intensely it almost hurt. Every fiber of my being wanted to escape that place, but the truck moved slowly, pulled by something unseen. I knew I should hit the brakes, turn around, but the road absorbed me as if there was no other option. Then, just as I was about to cross the curve, the CB emitted a final warning in a voice I barely recognized as my own. "This is your last opportunity, Jake. Stop now." With all my strength, I pressed the brake pedal, and the truck screeched to a halt just before the edge of the curve. The cabin trembled, and I felt the engine sputter in one last effort. I looked through the windshield and saw the abyss, the darkness that seemed to stretch out before me, the shadows watching from a distance, motionless as if waiting for me to take another step. I took a deep breath, and without looking back, I turned off the truck. The fog began to lift, and the road gradually cleared. I had escaped, but something told me I wasn't alone. If you are enjoying the stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It was past midnight, and the road wound before me like an endless ribbon of dark asphalt. There was something strange about this night. The air felt denser than usual, and the sky was covered in clouds blocking even the light from the moon. My name is Nick Morris, and I have been a truck driver for over 30 years, traversing all kinds of routes from well-paved highways to the most treacherous roads in the United States. Driving at night felt like entering a trance, a world where only I, the roar of my truck, and the soft murmur of the CB radio, left on by habit in case a fellow driver reported on the same route, existed. That night, I was hauling a load of heavy machinery parts. The weight of the truck and the stability of the cargo required all my concentration, so I decided to make no stops. My only plan was to drive straight through to the next service station, about 40 miles away. The road was utterly deserted. Not a soul in sight, and in the distance, I could barely make out the reflection of my headlights on the traffic signs. Suddenly, the CB radio emitted a faint crackle, barely a whisper mingling with static. I didn't think much of it. Interference was common in mountainous areas. But then something odd happened. Amid the static, I began to hear a voice that sounded barely perceptible, as if someone was speaking from far away. The voice was low, almost a murmur, but it seemed to carry a kind of authority, a familiarity that sent chills down my spine. Nick Morris," said the voice, and the sound of my own name resonated in the cabin. I stared at the CB, hoping it would give me some explanation. My first reaction was to think it was a prank by some colleague, although that idea didn't make much sense. Most truckers I knew were either retired or asleep by that hour, and the few who were still active wouldn't likely be on this isolated road. "Who's there?" I asked, gripping the CB microphone and trying to keep calm in my voice. But there was no response, only prolonged silence broken by the soft buzz of static. I decided to let it slide. The night was long, and hours on the road often play tricks on the mind. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel, trying to concentrate on the road. However, a couple of minutes later, the voice returned, this time much clearer, and what it said sent a deep chill to my core. "Nick, your mother's name is and, isn't it? And Morris loved to embroider flowers on the tablecloths she set when you were a child. You recall that scent of chamomile, don't you?" My breath caught in my throat. No one, absolutely no one besides my family, knew those details. My mother, and had passed away years ago, but as a child, I spent hours watching her embroider while she hummed old songs. I felt my hands begin to tremble. I gripped my teeth, trying to find a logical explanation. "Who are you? How do you know that?" I stammered into the CB, my voice shaking, but I tried to maintain control. The response was immediate, as if the voice had been waiting for my question. "Nick, don't worry. I know many things about you. I know you broke your left arm when you were 7 in that bicycle accident in front of the Johnson house. You remember running downhill and not seeing the pothole. It still hurts you when the weather changes, doesn't it?" My heart began to race so loudly I could hear it in my ears. That bicycle fall, the scar, and the ache in my arm that returned every winter were things I hadn't shared with anyone in years. I started to sweat cold, and my mind struggled to understand how someone on the radio could know such things. Without a second thought, I turned the dial on the radio, searching for another frequency, but the voice remained, no matter how many times I changed channels. It was as if I were trapped on a frequency I couldn't leave, one I couldn't abandon. The voice, though soft, grew more insistent, as if it knew I was getting anxious. "Nick, don't try to shut me off. You can't run away from me," said the voice, and this time it sounded almost amused, as if it thrived on the effect it was having on me. "Remember that night when you ran away from your grandfather's house? You were 11, and you swore you saw something move in the hallway. Of course, nobody believed you, but you know you saw something." I recalled that night clearly. It had been one of the most terrifying experiences of my childhood. I had run outside in sheer terror, convinced a strange shadow was lurking in the hallway, but everyone thought it was just my imagination. How was it possible that someone knew that? "What is this? Some sort of joke? Tell me who you are," I shouted into the CB, but deep down, I felt that this voice wasn't going to respond to me. Not in the way I desired. "It's no joke, Nick. I'm just here to keep you company tonight. After all, you've been alone on the road for so long, haven't you?" The tone of the voice was soft, almost soothing, yet each word deepened my fear. I couldn't see the person speaking, but I felt as if they were right behind me in some dark corner of the cabin. Then, as if to confirm my worst fears, the voice continued, mentioning something that completely froze me. Do you remember that night 20 years ago when you took that wrong turn by mistake? I certainly did. The man I saw on the road, the one who was hitchhiking, I had chosen to just drive past. I had never forgiven myself for not stopping that night. That particular night was etched in my memory like an open wound. It was true. Many years ago, on a rural road in New Mexico, I'd seen a man waving in the darkness. He was covered in dust and looked desperate. I ignored him under the pretense of avoiding trouble. The next day, I learned from a gas station that the man had died just hours after I passed. Of a heart attack, they said. Since then, the image haunted me, replaying in the back of my mind. Nick, the voice whispered, and this time it felt like a whisper emanating from within, as if the sound originated from the shadows of the cabin itself. That night, you weren't alone on the road. You never have been. There is always someone with you, even if you can't see them. The CB went completely silent. There was no more static or voices, just an oppressive, absolute silence. I remained frozen, unsure of what to do. The silence in the cabin was so dense that I felt each heartbeat echoing in the void. But then, suddenly, the voice returned, and this time it didn't come from the CB. It came from somewhere behind me. Why don't you look at the passenger seat, Nick? I didn't want to turn my head. My whole body refused to obey that command. I knew with an inexplicable certainty that something or someone was there, and if I looked, I would see something I couldn't bear. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, forcing myself to concentrate on the road. Yet I felt the presence beside me, so close I could hear its breathing. Come on, Nick. Don't you want to see who's talking to you? The voice had a soft tone, as if it were enjoying my terror. With my heart racing and my stomach twisted in knots, I forced myself to glance at the passenger seat. At first, I saw nothing but shadows cast by the headlights. But as my eyes adjusted to the dimness, I noticed a vague, barely discernible figure that was nonetheless present. It resembled a blurry reflection, a shadow that shouldn't be there. Its eyes, though dull, were fixed on me. "Remember, Nick," said the figure, and its voice seemed to drag itself across time. "I have always been with you." I tightened my grip on the wheel, diverting my gaze back to the road. My hands trembled, and the cold I felt was so profound that not even the cabin's heating could alleviate it. The figure vanished as suddenly as it had appeared, and the CB returned to its soft, familiar static. I have no idea how long it took to reach the next service station, but as soon as I parked the truck, I rushed out and stood under the lights, breathing in the cool morning air. I had never felt such relief at leaving the cabin of my own truck. Since that night, although the CB remains in the truck, I have never turned it on again. The night had descended heavily on the road with unusual intensity. A storm was brewing, and the sky was cloaked in a blanket of black clouds that barely allowed the light from the lightning crackling on the horizon to pass through. My name is Jack Monroe, and I have been driving throughout the United States for nearly 35 years, crossing states and dirt roads, enduring long and short journeys, navigating narrow highways and winding roads. That night, I had to drive a dangerous route to Arizona carrying a load of lumber for a construction company. I knew the storm would catch up to me at some point during the trip, but I had no choice. The job was the job, and the client expected their delivery at dawn. As I drove, I noticed the sky darkening even further, and the air becoming thick, as if it were a warning of what was to come. Around 10 p.m., the storm finally hit me. The rain started as a light drizzle, but soon turned into a wall of water that made it hard to see just a few meters ahead. I turned on the windshield wipers at full speed, but even then, the road blurred into darkness. The raindrops sounded like drumming on the cabin roof, and the wind battered the truck, making each turn more perilous. In that stretch of road, there were no lights or stations, nothing that offered a sense of security. Just me, my truck, and the fury of the storm roaring around me. The CB radio, which I always kept on, was merely static due to the bad weather. The lightning interfered with the signal, and occasionally, I heard crackling noises and strange sounds as if the storm itself were invading the channel. After several minutes of battling through near-zero visibility, I resigned myself to the idea of having to cross that part without any assistance from the radio or any company. However, just as I was about to turn off the CB to reduce the noise, an unusual sound caught my attention. It was a series of rhythmic beeps interspersed with brief and long pauses, something I had never heard before on a CB frequency. The message repeated over and over in the same rhythmic tone, like a plea frozen in time. The voice transmitting the message, if it could be called a voice, sounded inhuman, metallic, as if it were coming from another world. A chill ran down my back, and the truck began to veer off course. I hurried to regain control of the steering wheel, focusing on the road while trying to grasp what was happening. As I advanced, the beeping of the Morse code grew louder. The message repeated again and again, always the same pattern, SOS. A pause, and then words in a Morse code that became increasingly clear, SOS, air route, requesting assistance. The signal was strong and increasingly insistent, air route. Those words baffled me. How could someone on the radio be talking about an air route in the middle of a road? I pressed the microphone, determined to respond, even though it felt ridiculous. Is anyone there? This is Jack Monroe, truck driver en route to Arizona. I repeat, who is transmitting? I asked, my voice trembling slightly. I didn't know who I was speaking to or if anyone would hear my reply, but something inside compelled me to continue. For a few seconds, there was nothing but static. I thought the transmission had ceased. But then the voice returned, this time not in Morse code but in a kind of broken and archaic English. Here, Flight Alpha 11, we request emergency assistance. The voice crackled and the sound was irregular, as if it had passed through an old or broken filter. Flight Alpha 11, we are in trouble, we're losing altitude. Sigfog. Coordinates. Each word struck my mind like thunder. There was something chilling in the voice. It sounded like it came from a distant place, like an echo trapped in time. I knew that no plane currently would be designated as 11. That kind of designation was very old, probably from the 1950s or 60s. As the voice spoke, I recalled a long-forgotten story I'd heard at a nearby gas station years ago. A story I had almost forgotten. They said that in that area of the Rockies many years ago, a plane had disappeared during a storm like this one. The locals claimed that a small commercial flight never reached its destination and that they never found the wreckage or any passengers. It was a mystery that had gone unresolved, and on the rare occasions when someone mentioned it, they did so as a scary tale, a local legend. The transmission continued, we are losing altitude. Fire in the engine. The voice broke, and a sound that resembled a stifled scream resonated through the radio. We request assistance. If anyone can hear us, please respond. I grasped the microphone again, not knowing what to say. This is Jack Monroe on the road. Can you hear me? I repeat, can you hear me? There was no response, only the noise of static filling the CB. But then the voice returned, this time weaker, as if it were fading away. Fire! Smoke! We can't see anything. There was a silence, and then I heard something I would never forget. A series of desperate screams. Voices of men and women who seemed to be pleading for help, followed by the sound of an impact, a deafening noise that echoed throughout the cabin. The CB fell silent, the storm roared louder, and the road became increasingly slippery. I felt the cold sweat run down my forehead. The radio had gone completely silent, and only the drumming of the rain on the truck's roof and the sound of thunder echoed in the distance could be heard. I wasn't sure if I had imagined all that, but the fear was real. Instinctively, I made a decision and took a secondary exit, searching for a place to stop and process what I had just heard. I found a small clearing beside the road and halted the truck. I turned off the engine and, for a moment, I sat in silence, listening to the storm. Just when I thought it had all ended, the CB flickered back to life, this time with a voice clear as a whisper. "Jack, can you still hear us? We are still here." Terror paralyzed me. I hadn't touched the CB or switched it back on, but the voice was there, as if it were a whisper caught in the wind. I glanced through the windshield, and through the rain and mist, I could see a blurry figure that seemed to move along the road. It was like a shadow, a silhouette of someone standing in the storm, staring at me. The voice came back, soft yet persistent. "Help us, Jack. We don't want to be here." I closed my eyes, trying to convince myself it was just my imagination. But the CB emitted one last message, a whisper that resonated throughout the cabin, sounding like an echo of a multitude. "We are trapped, Jack, trapped in the fog." When I opened my eyes, the figure had vanished. I slammed the truck into gear and drove out of that clearing without looking back, the echo of those words ringing in my head. I never turned the CB back on that night or any other night since.